Welcome to Global Take, presented by SchoolRubric, a show about the international teaching experience. Teaching internationally is one of the best decisions you can make as an educator. In this show, we will meet teachers and administrators from around the globe living and working internationally. Our hope is that their stories and experiences will inspire you to explore the world of education. We will learn about all aspects of international teaching, from becoming an international teacher to what countries are the best fit for you, to the challenges of being away from your home country. Come take this unforgettable journey to the world of international schools with Global Take, presented by SchoolRubric.
Hello and welcome to this special edition of Global Take, here brought to you by SchoolRubric. It's a special edition because it is part one of a 6-part series that's going to focus on my new book called A Global Playbook. It's part of the International Education Leadership Series, and the full title then includes How Every International School Can Raise Its Game. It's centered around athletics, of course, but it's about how more attention and focus can be put onto the athletic program. And if you do so, it will improve the culture and community of the entire school, athletes or not. So use it as a tool to improve a whole school community. And because of that, it isn't just written for athletic directors or coaches. Of course, they'll get tremendous value out of the book and have already. But I wrote it so that it's really applicable for directors, principals, teachers, admin, really anyone that wants to improve their school community. They can all get value out of it. I centered it around 6 C's, and we'll see those right now. That'll be the 6th series of these global takes: core, commitment, care, culture, competition, of course, and the last one is communication. So they'll all work together, and we'll go through each section in one of these episodes. It was a collaborative effort. There are over 40 other educators involved in the book, and I have one of them with me today. I'm not here by myself just to talk to you. We're going to bring in Dave Horner right now. Hey, Dave, welcome.
Hey, Nick. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. You were a big contributor to, you are a big contributor to everything that I do. And you're actually the only person in the book to have 2 parts. And they're both in core, the first section here. So you're the perfect person to have on. Dave, where are you at right now? Tell everybody, please.
Yeah, so I'm the Director of Athletics and Student Life here at the Inter-Community School of Zurich. This is my 2nd year here, enjoying life in Switzerland. It's very green and lush, and we have wonderful seasons, sometimes 4 seasons in one day. It's an interesting place.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks again. And I said you're in core. You contributed to the introduction and then a section later on. So I had to start with core of my 6 C's because it can be defined as a thing or place that is of greatest importance to an activity or an interest. And some of the things in that first section are educational athletics, co-curricular versus extracurricular activities, mission and vision, which we'll touch on today, core value words, coaching standards, expectation of student athletes, and the last one is documentation. But of course, let's start with the intro, which you contributed to. And so the intro talks a little bit about all those things put together, but in your submission, you talk about students. Specifically, it says the students also need to be able to verbalize their why and have the opportunity to set goals for themselves and for their team. So, Dave, tell us a little bit about why you think it's so important for students to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think it's so easy for us because schools traditionally have been very teacher dominated, very teacher centric. And really what we're there for at the end of the day is the students. And I think trying to find out why they're there and what they're there for is really important so that they feel value within that program. So gives them a chance to explain why they're at the sport that they're at, why they're participating in those activities. And you might get different answers from the students. It could be, they want to hang out with their friends. They want to develop skills that maybe they have or they don't have. Maybe they want to try something new, or it could just be that they're there because their parents have told them that they have to be there, and they're, in some sort of like guardianship issue or something at home. They've got work and things like that. But at the end of it, really, what we want to do is try to establish an idea in the students' minds that we value them, that we want them to be part of the program. And we want to change their perception a little bit. I think a lot of times in school, students tend to think of things that they have to do as opposed to things that they get to do. And I think if we can just try and work with them a little bit, find out why they're there, find out what makes them tick, what gets them excited, we can change that have to be there into a want to be there or a get to be there type of scenario. Creates that greater sense of value for them being part of the program.
Wow, that's great. And that's what it's all about, right? I mean, mentioned that it's about improving your whole school community, but the focus is and always has to be the students. So these, long drawn out mission and vision statements, if students can't understand those and write their own or have that relate to them, then there's no use having them, I think. Yeah. Great. Well, mission and vision statements. Let's go on to that one. That's one of the sections that we want to touch on. Basically, every organization around the world has a mission and vision statement. I'm sure all the schools out there, if anyone watching this, have one already. But it's often you hear a big groan or a sigh when mission and vision comes up. All right, they can be very boring and long, but it could be a very positive process for a school or athletic department when they come together and write one. So Dave, I want to know, do you have your own at your school now, or maybe in one of your previous schools, have your own athletic department mission and vision statement?
Yeah, so we have one here at ICS. It's definitely not something that's finalized. It needs a little work. But in my last school, we were able to do quite a lot of work on a mission and vision statement within athletics, looking at what the school had for a mission and a vision statement, and then trying to apply that to activities in sports. It helps you as a department to understand what the end goal is. What are we trying to get out of this program? And they can really vary. So when we really broke it down at my last place, we decided that we couldn't really write one, we had to write three. Because when we looked at it, we said, well, primary school students, well, what are we really trying to get for a primary school student that's in either our sports or our activities program? Well, we're looking for variation. We want them to be involved in many different things, to have many different opportunities, the chance to develop skills that maybe they've never had before, never tried before. We want mass participation. Like, we're not going to be selecting students into groups, we're not going to be cutting anybody. We want them to all be there. And so we looked at that primary school or lower school function of that program, and it was really about getting as many students into the program as possible. And then when we looked at middle school, similar approach, definitely varied, but you're just looking for those students to try and streamline some of their options so they get a little bit more selective. They know that they've tried this before. Okay, I'm good at that thing. I'm not so good at that thing. These are the things that I want to try and do. And so you still want to keep that large participation numbers. You want them to have a bit of a varied approach, but you also want them to start to understand that there are some selections that they can make that part of your program, and that perhaps towards the end of their middle school life, there'll be some selective teams or selective components to programs where only a certain number of students can participate. And that really starts to then feed into the high school, where it's very much more of a selective process. Not everybody's guaranteed game time or activity time. You're really looking for students to pin down the things that that they want to do in terms of growing either their character or their skills in a certain way, so that when they go off to university or whatever job they're going to do after they leave school, they have those skills that they can then take on to their lives after the school setting. So I think in conclusion, you're kind of looking for a bit of a balance for a lower school, middle school, high school. You always want to include things like school culture, team spirit, character development. Those things are very important. I think in conclusion, keeping things short and concise, make them easy to understand, try and have some uniqueness for your school, maybe a central theme that you develop across the school. And then don't be afraid to involve other people in this process. And don't be afraid to change it if you don't feel like it's right, or to go through many different versions before you get to your final one.
Right. Wow, that's great. And there's the tips that you just said there, right? Scrolling at the bottom, someone wants to write their own. But not only did you guys write your own, you really considered the 3 different elements of your program and varied it. So that's very unique, I think, right there. One of the, we talked about contributors, or I mentioned all the other contributors. So I want to highlight one of the contributors now who submitted to this section. It's Mick Cooper. And he's been at a few schools, but he talked about the mission statement at ACS Tunis. And he said it was short, a sharp hook, featured a catchphrase that everyone knows, can understand, relate to, and use daily. So he was really impressed. This was a few schools back for him, but he still remembered it and said it right out. So I'll just put up a graphic of the ACS Tunis website from right now. And you see it right on the start. It's right there, opening doors, minds, and hearts. And that's it. That's their mission statement right there. So there's a good tip from Mick right out of the book. Short and sweet, that everyone can know and remember. All right, well, let's move on a little bit to another section, coaching standards. That was one of the ones in core. And we're going to hear from someone else, one of the other contributors I got on camera, Lee Rosky. So let's listen to him talk about his submission, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
So the bit that I wrote in Nick's wonderful book here, when I was writing it, I was thinking about trying I'm not an expert. I have my ideas, I have my end goal, what I want to get out of it, but really I love hearing from other coaches, which is what our conference we're at right now is all about. But what I try to do is give coaches enough freedom so that they can be themselves, they can be genuine, while having an established policies and intentions and a vision and mission for the program, without sort of limiting the coaches too much. So that's the idea.
Great. So thanks, Lee, for that and for your submission, of course. So coaching standards, using them as a base, and then letting the coaches kind of expand on them and show their uniqueness. So I know we have coaching standards in our handbook. It's not prevalent through everybody. It's not the case. Not every school has coaching standards written down and given to their coaches. So Dave, I want to know if you have them for your coaches.
Yeah, I wouldn't say we necessarily have coaching standards, but we definitely have job descriptions for coaches. I think when I was looking at it coming into this school, I was sort of thinking, how do we get a good foundational knowledge in all of our coaches? And one of the things I took from you, the NFHS honor roll program is something that I think is really great for creating a good foundational knowledge within your coaching team. When you're looking at the 4 courses that are part of that, getting onto the honor roll, sudden cardiac arrest, protecting students from abuse, concussion in sports, and the fundamentals of coaching, I think that gives you a really solid jumping off point for everyone to start in the same place. And then you can really start to look at, well, what are we trying to do outside of that? And maybe even coaches can then go ahead and do their own PD that's specific to their sport. You can start to talk a lot more about how are we developing character within the program, how are we developing school spirit and school culture, because you know that everyone has that basic fundamental understanding of these are the basic outlines of what a coach needs to have at your school.
Right.
So that's kind of where we're at. Yeah, like I said, not necessarily a set of coaching standards, but definitely a foundation, a jumping off point for what every coach should have when they come into the program.
Yeah, that's great. And it's definitely coaching standards or everything in the book isn't mandatory, right? You know, schools, it may not work for everybody or it may not be necessary. But as you said, a starting point, which Lee also uses his coaching standards for, is great. You mentioned NFHS Learn. There's the website, or NFHS Courses, and that's the website there for anybody interested. It's talked about in the book, of course, and fantastic, almost all free resources there. So perfect. Well, Dave, I mentioned you were the only person to contribute twice. So you had the section, the intro section, and then at the end, the last one in core is documentation. And it just talks about how important it is to have things clearly written out and available, right? That we can have the best mission, best core values, best coaching standards, but if they're not available to the coaches or easily accessible to parents and students and kids, then it's almost not worth having them. So Dave, what do you think about a tip for someone watching to help out with that documentation part?
Yeah, it's a good question. Something that I've worked on for the last few years. I think when you're trying to look at your handbook or trying to work on creating a handbook, you want to get as many versions of other people's handbooks as you possibly can. Don't be shy to reach out and see what other people are doing. I think that there's many great tips and tricks and different policies and procedures that are shared. And, within our AD community, it's so easy just to reach out and ask somebody if they have a policy for the fitness room, or do you have a policy for if a student wants to travel home by themselves and not on the bus with everybody else, those types of things. But when I was looking at documentation and what I did at my last school was I was looking at how can I merge professional development, which is what I wanted to do. I wanted to learn policy and procedure and get it right. And then how do I look at the policy and procedure that I have in my school and develop that and make it better? And I was in a really great situation in that I was trying to go through the CMAA accreditation through the NIAAA. And so updating my handbook was part of my project that I was getting professional development for, working with the NIAAA and working on that document. So I was able to really look at what was in our document existing, look at other people's documents, see what we needed to drag and pull in. And so it made it something that I really understood very well, because I basically wrote it from a point of where it was half written to then being fully completed and fully developed. So it meant that when I was having those conversations with coaches or with parents or with students, I knew the handbook really, really well. And I was able to provide very good insight into those policies and procedures and the reasons why they were there. And also being able to state that, these are not policies that I just grabbed from anywhere. I could cite my sources and references and say, this is where this is coming from. And this is the reasons why those policies are in place. Something that we have that's really great here, which I hadn't had until I came here, was we actually have our coaching handbook as a Google website. Mm-hmm. And so we actually put all of our policies and procedures onto that website, and everybody has access to it. But it's also the single point of reference for all of our fixture information, for all of our transportation information, for our athletes agreements. So the coaches, on a weekly basis, when I send out my coaches weekly, that is the top number one link that's on there. And so I know that everyone's going to it almost every day, if not every few days and every week. So that's something that's consistently being looked at and being looked over. And then what we do is at the end of the school year, if we feel like we need to review something, or we hear from coaches, this is not quite working, then we're able to go into that documentation, fix it in real time, and then it's still on that Google site for everybody to see. So that was a really great thing about coming to this school, that they had that set up, and then we were able to just adjust things where we needed to.
Well, that's great. Well, and I want to take your advice and ask you to share that with me after we're done, so I can take a look at it and learn, because that sounds fantastic. I would say my tip for documentation, just once you have it, actually, is to make your things a yearly version, put your date on it. So you have to go in and edit it every year. And it may seem like a small thing, but it's time where you set aside, no, I need to go update our handbook for each year, and then use that time to read it through. Make sure those things are still applicable. If you want to tweak anything, because it can be hard. You just, I wrote it once and leave it there, but you should always keep going back. So that's my tip for after you already have one. All right. Well, Dave, this has been great. I think we're done. We don't want to talk about everything in the whole first section, right? Because we want people to get it, get the book and read it in detail. But it gives a lot of added value to the book, these talks here. I want to thank the other people that contributed to this section. So I'll put them up right now. Todd, Jason, Marcello, Freddie, and Mick, who we mentioned already. Thank you for your contributions to the book. Those are just a few of the other people, aside from Dave, Lee Rosky, and myself, that are included. And just want to end with, telling people where they can get it, right? And that's really on Amazon. The book, as you can see below me, is available on Amazon. If you want more information about the book, you can go to that Globetrotting 80's website /book. Of course, SchoolRubric is the publisher of the book, the host of this episode of Global Take. So check it out right there. And if you want more information directly from me, you can reach out to me on Twitter, or on the website has all my contact info, and Dave's as well, I believe. So yeah, Dave, you mentioned it. It's a community. We want to share, ask for help, resources, which is why I thought this was just a great project to have out there with so many different people. And I hope it can be used as a valuable resource. So Dave, thanks for taking part in this first episode here, and of course the book.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
All right. Well, I hope you liked it here. We'll come back with the second part. It's on the section commitment, and I'll be joined with Chris Mott at the International School of Bangkok. So thanks again, and see you next time.
Thanks for watching and learning with us at SchoolRubric with educators from around the globe. For more access to articles, magazines, podcasts, live episodes, our international school directory, courses, and more, visit us at schoolrubric.org. Thank you.